Friday, June 12, 1959, 2:23 p.m. Cecil's Barbershop, 138th Street. The razor glided across Bumpy Johnson's throat like a whisper. Cecil, steady hands Monroe, worked with the precision of a surgeon and the calm of a man who had performed this ritual 1,000 times. Hot towel first, softening the stubble. Lather applied in slow circles, building to a perfect foam. Then the blade, German steel, stropped to a mirror shine, tracing the contours of Bumpy's jaw with movements so fluid they seemed choreographed. Bumpy's eyes were closed, his body relaxed in the worn leather seat. Around him, 6 customers waited on the wooden bench against the wall. Deacon Willie Crawford reading the Amsterdam News, Marcus Bell arguing quietly with his brother about the Dodgers' move to Los Angeles, 4 others lost in their own thoughts. The smell of talcum powder and bay rum hung in the air like incense. A radio in the corner played Sam Cooke, volume low. This was sacred space, masculine ritual, a place where men came to be groomed and to talk and to escape, however briefly, the weight of the world outside. Cecil wiped the remaining lather from Bumpy's face with a warm towel, patted the skin dry, reached for the aftershave bottle on the counter. The same bay rum blend Bumpy had used for 20 years, specially mixed by a pharmacist on Lenox Avenue. He uncapped the bottle, and Bumpy's nostrils flared. It was subtle, a note beneath the familiar bay rum, like something that didn't belong, something that burned. Bumpy's eyes opened, didn't let his face betray what his nose had just told him. Lye. Powdered lye mixed into the aftershave. Designed to burn through skin like fire through paper. Applied to a freshly shaved face, it would eat through flesh in seconds. Blind a man if it reached his eyes, leave scars that would never heal. Cecil's hand moved toward Bumpy's face, palm wet with the poisoned liquid. "Let me see that." Bumpy's voice was calm, conversational. Cecil froze. His eyes met Bumpy's. "Look, if this story got you hyped, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button real quick. Drop a comment where you're watching from and let me know, could Bumpy have handled this differently?" The barbershop went silent. Sam Cooke kept singing, but no one heard him anymore. Bumpy tilted the bottle toward the light filtering through the window, examined the liquid, brought it to his nose, and inhaled slowly, deliberately. His expression revealed nothing. Then he looked at Cecil. 11 years of a blade pressed against the most vulnerable part of his body, held by hands he had believed were loyal. "You first." "Mr. Johnson, please." Bumpy moved faster than a man his age should have been able to. His left hand shot out, grabbed Cecil's wrist, forced his palm open. His right hand tilted the bottle, pouring the poisoned aftershave into Cecil's cupped hand. Then he shoved Cecil's hand into his own face. The scream that followed would haunt every man in that barbershop for the rest of their lives. Cecil clawed at his skin, trying to wipe away the liquid, but the movement only spread it further. The lye ate into his flesh with a sound like bacon sizzling in a pan. Wet, bubbling, obscene. His cheeks blistered, his lips cracked and peeled. One eye squeezed shut as the chemical crept toward it, and his scream rose to a pitch that didn't sound human anymore. He collapsed to the floor, rolling, writhing, hands pressed to a face that was melting beneath his fingers. Bumpy stood slowly, straightened his tie, adjusted his cuffs. The 6 customers sat frozen on their bench, mouths open, eyes wide. No one moved. No one breathed. Bumpy looked at them. His voice was steady, almost pleasant. "Anyone else need a shave?" To understand how Cecil, steady hands Monroe, came to pour lye into the aftershave of the only man who had ever truly trusted him, you need to understand what desperation does to a father's heart. Jerome Monroe was 19 years old, Cecil's only child, his pride, his reason for getting up every morning since his wife had died of tuberculosis in 1952. The boy was smart, had finished high school with honors, was taking night classes at City College, studying to be an accountant. He had never touched drugs, never run numbers, never done anything that would bring him to the attention of men who operated in shadows. But on May 22, 1959, 3 weeks before that Friday at the Barbershop, 2 police officers pulled Jerome over on 145th Street for a broken tail light. They searched his car and found 2 ounces of heroin under the driver's seat. Jerome swore he had never seen the drugs before, swore he had been set up, swore on his mother's grave that he was innocent. It didn't matter. The evidence was there. The arrest was made. The charges were filed. Possession with intent to distribute. 15 years at Sing Sing if convicted. Cecil hired a lawyer, a white man from downtown, who charged $500 just to look at the case file. The lawyer's assessment was grim. The arresting officers were veterans with clean records. The evidence was solid. Jerome's protests of innocence would mean nothing to a jury. "Your son is going to prison," the lawyer said. "The only question is for how long." Cecil left that office feeling like a man who had just been told his child had died. In many ways, he had. 15 years in Sing Sing would destroy Jerome, would take a bright young man with dreams of becoming an accountant and turn him into something broken, something hard, something that Cecil wouldn't recognize when it finally walked out of those gates. He went home that night and wept until there were no tears left. 3 days later, the devil came calling. Sal the barber Mancini found Cecil outside St. Philip's Church on a Sunday morning, still wearing his choir robe, still carrying the hymnal he had sung from. The irony of the nickname was not lost on anyone. Sal had earned it not because he cut hair, but because of the way he cut men who owed money to the Genovese family. Precision wounds, always in places that would heal ugly, always leaving scars that served as permanent reminders. "Mr. Monroe, I hear you've got trouble." Cecil stiffened. He knew who Sal was. Everyone in Harlem knew who Sal was, or at least knew enough to cross the street when they saw him coming. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Your boy, Jerome, 2 ounces of heroin under his seat." Sal smiled, gold tooth glinting in the Sunday light. "Rough break. Good kid like that looking at 15 years. Real shame." "How do you know about that?" "I know about a lot of things. I know the officers who arrested him, Rizzo and Palmieri. Good men, reasonable men." Sal's smile widened. "The kind of men who might be persuaded to misplace some evidence, forget some details, let a case fall apart before it ever sees a courtroom." Cecil's heart hammered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your son doesn't have to go to prison. I'm saying those charges can disappear like smoke." Sal stepped closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. "All it takes is a favor. A small one. Something a man with your particular skills could accomplish in about 30 seconds. "What kind of favor?" Sal reached into his jacket and produced a small glass vial. The powder inside was white, crystalline, innocent-looking. "Lye, medical grade. Mix it into some aftershave, apply it to a freshly shaved face, and—" He made a gesture like something melting. "We're not asking you to kill anyone, Mr. Monroe. Just rearrange someone's appearance a little. Someone who's been a problem for friends of mine for a very long time." Cecil stared at the vial. His mouth went dry. Bumpy Johnson. "See, you're already ahead of me." Sal pressed the vial into Cecil's hand. 11 years you've been shaving that man. He trusts you completely. One Friday afternoon, you do what you've always done. Only this time, the aftershave has a little something extra. He screams, you step back, everyone panics. By the time anyone thinks to look for you, you and Jerome are on a bus to Chicago, starting fresh." "And if I refuse?" Sal's smile disappeared. "Then your son does 15 years, and when he gets out, if he gets out, maybe he has an accident, falls down some stairs, gets hit by a car that doesn't stop." He shrugged. "Tragedies happen every day, Mr. Monroe, especially to young men with no one to protect them." Cecil looked at the vial in his hand. At the church doors behind him, still open, still inviting. At the Sunday morning sunlight that suddenly felt cold. "I need time to think." "You have until Friday. That's when Johnson takes his weekly shave, isn't it?" Sal patted Cecil's shoulder like an old friend. "You're a good father, Mr. Monroe. Do the right thing." He walked away, leaving Cecil standing alone with a vial of poison and a choice that would damn him either way. For 6 nights, Cecil didn't sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, the vial of lye on his nightstand glowing in the darkness like a malevolent eye. He thought about Jerome, his smile, his laugh, the way he had looked in his graduation gown just 2 years ago. He thought about Bumpy Johnson, the man who had sat in his chair every Friday for 11 years, who had trusted Cecil with a blade at his throat, who had attended Cecil's wife's funeral and paid for the headstone without being asked. He thought about what he was being asked to do, to betray a man who had shown him nothing but respect, to disfigure a human being, to burn away a face with chemicals while its owner screamed. He thought about Jerome in a prison cell for 15 years, the things that would be done to him, the man he would become. On Thursday night, Cecil made his decision. He told himself it was for Jerome, told himself any father would do the same, told himself that Bumpy Johnson was a criminal anyway, a man who had done terrible things to terrible people, a man who probably deserved whatever came to him. He told himself a lot of things. None of them helped him sleep. On Friday morning, June 12th, Cecil Monroe woke up at 5 a.m., went to his barbershop, and mixed powdered lye into the bottle of bay rum aftershave that Bumpy Johnson had used for 20 years. Then he squared the floor, arranged his combs and razors, and waited for 2 p.m. The first time Bumpy Johnson walked into Cecil's barbershop was October 3rd, 1948. Cecil had only been open for 6 months, still building his reputation, still proving that a colored barber on 138th Street could offer the same quality as the white shops downtown. Better, actually, because Cecil understood black hair, black skin, the particular needs of men who had been told their whole lives that they weren't worth caring for. Bumpy had heard about him from Mame. "There's a new barber," she'd said. "Steady hands, doesn't talk too much. You'd like him." That first shave lasted 45 minutes. Bumpy hadn't said a word until Cecil was done. Then he looked in the mirror, ran a hand across his jaw, and nodded once. "Same time next week." He came back every Friday after that. Same chair, same time, same ritual. Over 11 years, Cecil learned things about Bumpy Johnson that most people never got to see. The way his shoulders relaxed when the hot towel touched his face, releasing tension he carried everywhere else. The small scar behind his left ear from a knife fight in the 30s that he never talked about. The way he hummed along to gospel music on the radio, so quietly you almost couldn't hear it. Bumpy learned things about Cecil, too. About his wife's illness, the slow decline, the mounting hospital bills. About Jerome's birth, his first steps, his report cards. About the dreams Cecil had for his son. College, a good job, a life better than the one Cecil had been given. When Cecil's wife died, Bumpy paid for everything. The funeral, the casket, the headstone. He never mentioned it afterward, never held it over Cecil's head, never asked for anything in return except the same thing he always asked for: a clean shave on Friday afternoon. That was trust. Real trust. The kind that takes years to build and seconds to destroy. And Cecil had destroyed it for a vial of powder and a promise from men who would have killed his son anyway if it suited them. Cecil lay on the floor of his own barbershop, face burning, screams fading to whimpers, and he knew, with the terrible clarity that only comes after irrevocable choices, that he had damned himself for nothing. Bumpy stood over him. The 6 customers remained frozen on their bench, witnesses to something they would never be able to unsee. "Get him up." Marcus Bell moved first, shaking off his paralysis. He and his brother grabbed Cecil's arms, lifted him to his knees. Cecil's face was a ruin. Skin bubbled and peeling, one eye swollen shut, lips cracked and bleeding. He sobbed like a child, snot and tears mixing with the chemical burns. Bumpy crouched down until he was eye level with the man who had just tried to disfigure him. "Who?" Cecil tried to speak, coughed, tried again. Sal Mancini, Genovese family. They have my son, Mr. Johnson. They framed him, planted drugs in his car, said they'd make the charges go away if I—" He broke into fresh sobs. "Jerome! They're going to kill Jerome!" "Your son is in the tombs awaiting trial, I know." Bumpy's voice was flat, emotionless. "I know about the arrest. I know about Rizzo and Palmieri. I know about the planted evidence." Cecil looked up, his one good eye widening with shock. You knew?" "I know everything that happens in Harlem." Bumpy stood. "What I didn't know was that you would let the Italians turn you into a weapon. 11 years, Cecil. Every Friday. You held a blade to my throat, and I let you. Because I trusted you." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't unburn your face." Bumpy turned to Deacon Crawford. "Get Juno. Tell him to bring the car around back. And call Dr. Hayes. Tell him we need him at the brownstone in an hour." "What about—" Crawford gestured at Cecil. "He's coming with us. We're not done." The back room of the barbershop smelled like chemicals and despair. Cecil sat in a wooden chair, hands bound behind him, face wrapped in wet towels that did nothing to stop the pain. Dr. Hayes had come and gone, done what he could, delivered a grim prognosis. The damage was permanent. Cecil would heal, but he would never look human again. The lie had eaten too deep. Bumpy sat across from him, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. "The Italians gave you a choice," Bumpy said quietly. "Your son's freedom from my face. You chose your son. I understand that." He sipped the coffee. "I'd probably have done the same thing if I were a different kind of man." "Then why?" "Because you didn't come to me." Bumpy's voice hardened. 11 years, Cecil. I paid for your wife's funeral. I sent business your way when you were struggling. I sat in your chair every Friday and let you put a blade to my throat because I believed you were loyal." He leaned forward. "If you had come to me, if you had told me about Jerome, about the frame-up, about what the Italians were asking, I would have handled it. Your son would be free, and you would still have a face." Cecil's sobs intensified. "I didn't know." "You didn't trust me. After 11 years, you trusted the Italians more than you trusted the man who had never given you a reason to doubt him." Bumpy set down his coffee. "That's the part I can't forgive." He stood, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame.
"But I can show mercy, because unlike you, I don't punish children for their father's sins."
Cecil looked up, confusion breaking through the agony.
"Your son walks free tomorrow. Juno is handling it now. The charges will disappear. Rizzo and Palmieri will suddenly remember that they made a mistake. Jerome will be home by dinner." I don't understand." "I'm not doing it for you."
Bumpy's voice was ice.
"I'm doing it because your son is innocent. Because he doesn't deserve to pay for your weakness."
He turned to face Cecil one last time.
"But you're done in Harlem. You leave tonight. You don't come back. Ever. If I see your face north of Philadelphia..."
"What's left of it won't be enough to bury. Where am I supposed to go?" "Somewhere with mirrors, lots of mirrors." Bumpy's eyes were cold. "Every time you look at yourself, you'll remember. Every time your son looks at you, he'll know. That's your punishment, Cecil. Not death, not prison. Just the rest of your life, wearing the mask the Italians gave you." He walked out and didn't look back. Sal, the barber Mancini, was found 3 days later in the back of his own car, parked behind a warehouse in Red Hook. His face was untouched. Bumpy wasn't an ironic man, but his hands had been removed at the wrists. Clean cuts, surgical. The kind of work that spoke of precision and patience. A note was pinned to his chest, 2 words written in careful script. "Steady hands." Vito Genovese received the message loud and clear. The incursion into Harlem stopped. The corrupt cops who had framed Jerome Monroe were transferred to Staten Island, far from anyone who mattered. The balance of power remained unchanged. Jerome Monroe was released from the Tombs on June 14, 1959. All charges dropped due to insufficient evidence. He never knew the full story of what his father had done or what Bumpy Johnson had done in response. All he knew was that he had been saved and that his father needed to leave New York immediately for business reasons. They took a bus to Detroit that night. Jerome asked questions. Cecil gave no answers. He couldn't. Every time he tried to speak about what had happened, his ruined face would throb and the words would die in his throat. In Detroit, Cecil found work as a janitor in a factory that made automobile parts. He couldn't cut hair anymore. His hands shook too badly, and no customer wanted to look at what was left of his face. He lived in a small apartment, kept to himself, and watched his son from a distance as Jerome finished his education and became the accountant he had always dreamed of being. Every morning, Cecil looked in the mirror. Every morning, he saw the price of his betrayal staring back at him. The left side of his face was a topographic map of scar tissue, ridges and valleys of melted flesh, one eye permanently narrowed, lips twisted into a perpetual grimace. Children pointed at him on the street. Adults looked away. His own son struggled to meet his gaze. The Italians had promised him a mask. They had delivered, and he wore it every day for the rest of his life. Back in Harlem, Cecil's barbershop sat empty for 3 months before a new owner took over. The chair where Bumpy Johnson had sat every Friday was replaced. The mirrors were changed. The whole interior was gutted and rebuilt, as if the new proprietor was trying to exorcise something that couldn't be seen. Bumpy found a new barber, a young man named Theodore, who had apprenticed under Cecil but had never known about the arrangement with the Italians. Theodore was skilled, professional, and asked no questions about why his predecessor had left so suddenly. The first time Theodore shaved Bumpy, his hands trembled slightly. "Relax," Bumpy said, eyes closed, voice calm.
I don't bite. Yes, sir. And don't use any aftershave I haven't personally inspected.
Theodore paused, uncertain if it was a joke. Bumpy's expression gave nothing away.
Yes, sir.
The shave was excellent. Bumpy tipped generously and made an appointment for the following Friday. Same time, same ritual. Different hands. Life went on, as it always did in Harlem. The streets kept humming, the numbers kept running, the community kept surviving, day by day, dollar by dollar, held together by bonds that the outside world couldn't see or understand. But for years afterward, barbers throughout Harlem told the story to their apprentices. The story of Cecil "Steady Hands" Monroe, who had held a blade to Bumpy Johnson's throat for 11 years, and then threw it all away for a promise from men who would have betrayed him anyway. The story of the aftershave that smelled wrong, and the 2 words that sealed Cecil's fate. You first. The hand that holds the blade, they would say, answers to the face it serves. And in Harlem, in 1959, every face served Bumpy Johnson, whether they knew it or not. Look, if this story hit different, you already know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications because next week, you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were Cecil? Burn Bumpy's face to save your son? Or risk your son's life to protect a man who trusted you? There's no easy answer. That's what makes it real. I read every comment. Let me know where you stand. And remember, in Harlem, the barbershop was sacred ground. The man in the chair was vulnerable. And Bumpy Johnson never forgot who held the blade. What would you have done if you were Cecil? Burn Bumpy's face to save your son? Or risk your son's life to protect a man who trusted you?